After attending Clemson University, go Tigers, I came to Atlanta, worked for IBM in the telecom division called Rome Systems for about 10 years, and learned a lot about technology and telecommunications. And kind of near the end of my career, we had a client that was a multifamily operator here in Atlanta called the Joy and LaCroix Company. And we had done some real interesting work for them. I got to know their principals pretty well. And they had some proposals from a multifamily technology group that was offering voice, video, and data to the multifamily world, and asked me to review it. And as I looked at the proposals from these third-party companies, I essentially said, you know what, you could probably do this yourself. You're going to make a little bit of money that you're not making today. You could probably do it yourself. And one thing led to another, and ended up leaving a very nice job with IBM Rome to start Advanced Telemedia, which was a cable company at first, and telephone company for the multifamily. And then as the internet got more established, we added that as a product. So we became our own little mini Comcast, and ran that for about 8 years, grew it to several hundred properties in Atlanta, was growing into Florida when we ended up selling the company to Comcast. And so that was my first entrepreneurial endeavor. And after we sold that, I participated in a couple startups and made some investments in some new technologies. And some of that went well, some of it, there's many lessons learned. But about 7 years later, another similar cable company that was venture backed, had raised about $50 million, was looking for a new CEO. So I ran that for several years, and ended up selling it about 5 years later. And right before we sold it, we kept asking the multifamily owners, what else can we do for you? We're already a voice, video, data provider. What other problems can we help you with? And as we were doing research, one thing led to another, and saw that there was some opportunities, I felt like, outside of being a service provider, but being a technology provider. And that for a lot of the firms, there was a great, there was probably 6 or 7 different technology disciplines, like access control, or surveillance cameras, or video intercoms, or Wi-Fi systems. And different companies had different strengths, but they were somewhat siloed, and felt like the market was saying, you know, when I build a project in Atlanta, I need to find Atlanta's best integrators. But when I go to Charleston or Charlotte, Orlando, Nashville, Dallas, I got to start that search all over again. And if there was a company that was regional in nature, that could satisfy or provide consistent results in those areas, and as technology's grown, like with the Internet of Things capabilities, and you could actually integrate these technologies, that would be a differentiator and would be something to separate us from kind of the pack. And about 4 years ago, a friend of mine was running Symphony Technologies, and they were mostly doing work as a contractor to large companies like JCI and AT&T. They weren't really dealing with direct end users. And so I talked to Johnny and Eric, the principals, and said, let's start a new division where we can take the talent that you have from a technical expertise standpoint, and build together a solution that's really focused on multifamily and hospitality in particular, is what I and spend a lot of my time with. But all those different devices, you know, have the Internet of Things as somewhat, they're all connected devices, either hooked up wired or wirelessly. And if we could put together that solution, I think there's an opportunity to kind of create something special. And so that notion was birthed several years ago. And again, we got our company trained up and all the key technologies there. And in the last 3 years, this particular division has blossomed, and it's doing great. So overall, as a company, Symphony, in the last few years, we've probably tripled our employees. We've tripled our revenues. The year's not over yet, but we might even, we were planning on 50% growth this year, and it looks like it could be 75 or 100% growth this year. So anyways, we're having a great year, and we've got some great people, and we're having a lot of fun doing what we're doing. But that's a little bit of my journey of kind of how we got here today.
Yeah. And I mean, you're right. It's great to be part of an ever-growing team and company with Symphony. And Trey, you mentioned, I mean, when you first met with Johnny and Eric and were being brought on to the team, specifically with the getting into the multifamily area. I mean, and going back to your time at IBM, why multifamily? How did you kind of find yourself in that discipline? And just because, I mean, it seems like that's a trend throughout your whole journey to what brought you here today. So why multifamily specifically?
Yeah, good question. I think it's because that's where I've spent most of my time, and I've developed I don't know if competency is the right word, but a comfortableness, and hopefully competency goes along with that. But just understanding the multifamily world, and a lot of our, people look at us as a systems integrator, and a lot of our competitors, they'll focus on general contractors and electrical contractors, and they do a project and they're kind of done. We've taken a different tack. We focus a lot on the developer as well as the people that design for the developers. And so there's an ecosystem out there that we are working to penetrate that will allow us to help design the RFPs, help influence the solutions. But on the developer front, there's a lot of different customers, because you have the development team that's putting a deal together for multifamily, and then they essentially turn it over to a construction group, either internally or externally, where they hire a general contractor. The GC sometimes will push a lot of the technology things that we do over to the electrical. And so we've got many clients where we deal directly with the developer. We'll be contracted through the GC. We'll be contracted through the electrical company. We don't really care, but we just want to offer the best value to the end developer, and make sure that we can give them a product on time. So we have different, elements that, for the developer person, they're looking for, budgets and designs that are going to be consistent across the board, relative to labor markets that might vary. But the construction team, they want a PM that's going to project manage the whole project. Yet we have different disciplines within the project and make sure that those people are talking to each other. There's no finger pointing, and that we turn over a great project to property management, and then property management can get the training and service and support they need. But if there's a rotation and resources on the property level, that we can come back in and retrain the staff. And so there's a lot of constituents that we have to pay attention to. And again, I think that's what makes us a little bit different than some of the other folks out there.
Yeah. I mean, being involved in so many different arms, but that's what I guess lends itself to being that integrator, that company that can do it all. And so, Trey, for you, specifically being brought in with the Internet of Things division, being the president. So, can you talk a little bit about what exactly the Internet of Things is and how that all plays into these different constituents, these different arms of Symphony?
Sure. So, several years back, was working as a service provider to the multifamily industry, and we kept looking for, we were already doing cable, we were already doing internet, we were already doing VoIP telecom at the time. Again, what else can we do? And then when we started seeing some of the different technologies out there, the Internet of Things, if you will, was birthing. And so Nest thermostats were coming out, and smart door locks, and sensors for leak detection, and security cameras, doorbell cameras, different devices to maybe control the blinds, and all those were connected. And as those elements were kind of converging, there's a lot of difference of opinions of, should we be on a Google track, or should we be on an Apple ecosystem track, or which the best, Samsung's got a platform, and companies like Stratus came out that we're a Stratus supplier on, and they developed some software that can control not only what's inside the unit, but it can also offer management controls where they can control the thermostat or, again, see leaks real time when they happen, or provide keys that are digital or Bluetooth, so you don't have to rekey all the time or a customer loses a key late at night. And so those Internet of Things, all those things need to talk, and they're either connected wired or wirelessly. So we started looking at networks for the community. And how do we tie all those things in there? And I just saw that there was a lot of silos where people did their individual element, but not many people were wide and deep across the multifamily technology spectrum. And so with the familiarity of multifamily, I felt like if we can offer, not be married to any one particular technology, but offer our customers kind of a good, better, best approach to whatever their particular need is. If they want a cloud-based access control system, we have that. If they want to pay one time and reduce maybe the initial cost, and they're not worried about mobile access cards, we have a solution for both those. There's not really a right or wrong. It's just kind of whatever is the best fit for the customer. So we have taken that to task and said, from a technology standpoint, we're going to put our developer and construction and project manager hats on for a minute. How do we make their lives easier? And so we have taken the steps and made the investment to train up our team, get engineers certified in all the appropriate products, and develop the construction and service and support expertises to design, engineer it, to build it, and then to service and support it, and try to make all those things connect, and at least where it makes sense to connect those. And that's where it gets really interesting, because they're networks that are many times siloed, as I have said a couple times, and we connect those, we make them talk, and then we integrate it so that you can take your cell phone. In fact, here at our office, we've got a Butterfly intercom system that also integrates with Stratus. With my Stratus app, I can get into the building. I can send codes to let somebody in. I've got our Brevo partnership where I can use my phone as my Brevo access control. I can manage my door lock and the lights and a lot of other elements, all with one app, where everything's nicely integrated together. And so that's where it's a little bit complicated, and that's, again, what separates the men from the boys, if you will. And I think that's why we're doing what we're doing, is we wanted to take something that's where your average person is going to need a lot of training to integrate all those different systems together. If we can do that well, and repeat it and scale it, I think we've got a pretty cool business.
Yeah. I mean, of course, everything that we do, it seems to be pretty amazing. And speaking to it, yeah, it does seem like it can be a little complicated, but then once you get into it and you have that company that is capable of doing all that and training the people to do that. So then, Trey, with this specifically and with the growth of Symphony, where it's come to and where it is today, what are the biggest challenges that you face, or that we face as a systems integrator? Maybe trying to look at it and offer that good, better, best approach, and really appealing to different customers or different clients. What are the biggest challenges, or what is the biggest challenge that we're facing as an integrator?
I think it's twofold. One is kind of keeping up with the technologies. Things are moving pretty quickly, so that takes some time and energy to do that. And so we've got a great network and great partners that keep innovating, and we're trying to do some innovations ourselves. But I'd say that's one element, is staying abreast of what's going on as things are changing so quickly. And then secondly, it would be executing. One of the sayings we have around here is that not any one thing is ridiculously hard, but for us to do what we do well, we've got to do 100 little things, many times sequentially, or sometimes a couple of those can be in parallel. But there's a lot of little things that end up making this integrated ecosystem. And so just understanding that, and make sure we measure twice, cut once, kind of an approach. So the execution is really key. And we're only as good as our last job. And so I do like, what I liked about the service provider business is we were, nice recurring revenues. And in this business, really the recurring revenue element is the next project. Mm-hmm. And so if you're only as good as your last project, you're not going to get the next project unless you can consistently execute. And so to be super candid, I think we do pretty well on the execution front. If we make a mistake, we'll own it. We'll do our best to give you the good news and the bad news, and we'll learn from our mistakes. And candidly, we've had a learning curve on a couple things. Mm-hmm. But as we've gotten bigger and better, we're also faster. We're getting enough scale where we can buy product less expensively. But a big part of what makes Symphony is the culture. And so Eric and Johnny have already had a significant foundation in our culture. One of our culture can be signed up or described in one word, is the word honor. And so we feel very strongly that we need to be honorable to our coworkers, honorable to our customers, honorable to our vendors. And there's a lot of things that flow out of that. But if we can be honorable in all the things that we do, we will create a company that generates customers that want to continue to do business with them. Mm-hmm. And so the last few years, has represented some significant growth, as I mentioned. And so as we're growing, we're also attracting awesome employees, and we've got a great team over here. And kind of the Symphony name, it comes from this notion that there's a lot of noise out there, and we're the conductor, and we're making beautiful music out of the noise. And so I think the element that makes Symphony special is that we have experts in all those different areas. They're well trained. They're super people. They get along great. We have a lot of fun at our office. And so we work hard, play hard, and that shows off in our projects. And many of our customers have been thrilled to partner with us. And if we've made mistakes, we own up to it, and we'll make it right.
Mm-hmm. It's almost like you could say we're creating technology harmony. That's kind of sounds like what you're saying, what we're trying to do. We are.
We should use that as a tagline, Katie.
Yeah. That's a good idea. Maybe we'll do that.
So there's a lot of noise out there, and we're trying to make nice music. So
mm-hmm. Yep, absolutely. And of course, obviously, if you guys didn't catch that, that's why our podcast is called the Technology Harmony Podcast, because that is what we are in pursuit of doing, creating that harmony. And so, Trey, now within Symphony, of course, we've grown a lot, and looking forward, specifically within the IoT division, what do you hope it grows to become, and how does that kind of support the overall mission of Symphony?
Yeah, so I think going back to IoT, a lot of the official IoT elements are, for multifamily, for example, are inside the unit. But I think the next level of IoT is going to be across the property. So I think we want to get to a point where, building automation, building controls, HVAC for a whole property, not just for individual units. There's a whole lot of elements that can be managed and monitored remotely, and we're geared up to do that. And some other there's other technologies that we haven't spoken about, like distributed antenna systems and emergency radio response systems. Those are more company or property wide solutions. So or IP or devices that we can speak to, manage, monitor. And there's in the unit, they're across the property, and we want to manage that whole thing and have a dashboard that can really help owners maximize all the efficiencies that are capable, such as energy management, water management, out there. So I think as new properties are being built, we do a ton of new construction work right now. But there's also plenty of opportunities for existing communities that want to embrace technologies that are maybe doing a refresh. So we can help both existing and new. And really, we want to be their trusted partner, and we're all about relationships and partnerships. And the desire that we have is to not get the latest iPhone because there's a new phone, but if there's a purpose behind that phone and a purpose behind that technology, we want to help people take technology to make better business decisions, that typically do one of three things. It's going to drive new revenues, it's going to cut costs down, or it's going to create a better customer experience. And so our solutions impact all three of those areas. And I think as a company, if we can continue to help customers, hit those objectives that they have, that will continue to grow and continue to be successful.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Yeah. So Trey, before we wrap, that was a great looking forward of what we want to achieve for Symphony and specifically within the IoT and how that plays into the overall picture. But before we wrap and I ask you where people can get in contact with you, I have to know. So you have clearly a very entrepreneurial journey leading to where you are today, and which is really cool. It's really an amazing path that you've taken. But do you remember when maybe you were younger that you had that maybe an entrepreneurial desire? Did you start like a lemonade stand or any kind of tendencies or anything that you remember reflecting back to your childhood that maybe signified to you that one day you would want to start your own business or be a part of multiple startups?
Yeah, absolutely. I grew up in a very nice kind of middle-class family, and we were never lacking anything, but we didn't have a lot of extra funds. So I remember as a kid growing up, I was always cutting grass, shoveling snow, had a paper route. So I was trying to create my own spending money when I was a kid. When I got into high school, I play a lot of tennis. I bought a tennis racket stringer, and I strung tennis rackets. And I made enough money doing that my first car, my kids, we somehow decided to provide them a pretty nice car when they turned 16. I had to go buy my own car. And it was a little bit of a rusty red car, but it was a red Porsche back in the day. And I paid for it with my own racket stringing money. And my dad was kind of a car nut. And we took it apart, put it back together, and learned to be a little bit mechanical while I was doing all that. But it was a lot of fun. But it's nice to be somewhat self-sufficient. And so I've been blessed in so many areas, and wanted to always enjoyed, I want to be in a situation where we're not relying on the economy so much, or relying on the government. Let's pick a business that is going to be around and you're going to need it whenever. And then as it sits today, we're certainly benefiting from the growth in the economy and the growth of new construction. But I think if the new construction stopped, there's a nice market for what we're doing for existing communities. And so hopefully we're going to be recession-proof from that standpoint. But yeah, as a kid, always, have kind of had an entrepreneurial endeavor inside me. And after 10 years at IBM, I left a very nice, great job with great people to make a lot less money in the shorter run. But several years later, things worked out pretty well.
Yeah. I love that. I mean, having that kind of planted within you from a young age, and then having it shape your whole life, being able to have that discipline and that drive. And then too, leading to the overall goal or overall drive of Symphony then too, what we can do, we can be self-sufficient, or even if things change, being able to adapt as new things happen.
Right. Yeah. It's a good way to live. And, there's a book that influenced me a lot, probably about 20-ish years ago, called The On Purpose Person. Mm-hmm. And we try to model a lot of those elements here at our company. But in that book, it challenges the reader to figure out their purpose in life, And I went through an exercise and kind of figured out my personal purpose. And, if you can live with your personal purpose in check with your business purpose, and you have alignment there, that's a great way to live, and there's a lot of consistency there. And I think for my personal purpose and our company's purpose, there's complete alignment. We have very shared values, and that makes it very passionate for me to get up and work here, and again work with great people that have that common vision and values. So I hope everybody at some point can go through that. The book is called The On Purpose Person, by the way, from Kevin McCarthy, and it's probably been one of my top 5 most influential books.
There you go. Good piece of advice. Everybody should read that book, find out their purpose. Well, Trey, if somebody wanted to learn more about you and get in touch with you, how might they do that?
Yeah, probably my LinkedIn profile is probably the easiest, but my personal email is treygaskins@gmail.com, TreyGaskins@gmail. And that's probably the easiest and best way to get a hold of me. And Kitty, I appreciate you taking the time to interview your co-host today, and look forward to having our whole team do this. So I'm the first one on the team, and I hope as more people get to know us, they'll see that there's some good people over here, and we're striving hard to please our customers every day.